Before we get to business, a quick question. You were pulled out of retirement to lead Ayala. Was it a surprise?
Of course. From the golf course one on a Sunday to work 7 o'clock the next morning, I was absolutely surprised.
A banker by profession, how is it like leading a conglomerate right now?
Well, the skill sets are very similar, right? Between banking and private equity, the skill sets are actually quite useful for leading a conglomerate. So it's been an easy adjustment.
Sabong, what's the direction under your leadership at Ayala? What's the strategy going forward?
Slinda, I want to take advantage of the growth of the Philippine economy. This economy has been amazingly resilient. In this quarter, we'll be back to where we were pre-COVID. And that's on the strength of consumption, which is back to pre-COVID levels. It's on the strength of government spending, which is in excess of pre-COVID levels. However, exports are lower than pre-COVID levels. Investments are lower than pre-COVID levels. Just think of what happens to this economy if exports and investments get back to pre-COVID levels. That's the next boost to growth. And what we'd like to do is make sure that Ayala is well positioned to take advantage of that boost to growth. I think we have the portfolio that will do that.
So can you clarify on the opportunities you see under the current administration? Where would you be investing in more?
Well, it's very clear that the current administration is very focused on investments, which makes a lot of sense because we have a consumption-led economy. And investments have always been a smaller than a smaller part. So we have to focus on that. And when you look at our portfolio, it is in those sectors which, frankly, command a lot more investments. In the banking sector, for example, where we continue to build, in real estate, where we'll continue to roll out a lot more estates and build our leasing business. In telcos, where we'll continue to build the tech side of Globe. And in energy, where we'll continue to roll out much more renewable energy. So we will be adding investments into an economy that sorely needs more investments and taking advantage of this next ramp up in growth.
Bong, it's Rish here. Give us a sense of when been looking through the business as it stands, which you think are the weakest parts and which are the strongest parts of the corporation here?
Well, our core businesses, Rish, are all pretty strong. They're number one or number two in their sectors. BPI is probably the most digitalized big bank around. It's growing market share. It's showing 12% loan growth. It's growing its deposit market share. If you look at Globe, Ernest and his team, they've done a phenomenal job. And right now, as the core business begins to look much more mature, they're focusing on the whole tech side of the business, GCash, for example, and everything else that is tech. And then look at renewable energy. This is a company that didn't exist 12 years ago. And now it's among the leaders in the region. And not to mention Ayala Land, right, which is a traditional strength of ours. So our core businesses are in great shape, frankly. They're in great shape. Now, we've got smaller businesses that we continue to grow. The health side is very important to us. COVID showed us that the nation is underinvested in health. And there we'll do a lot more. We'll continue to digitalize that business. We have a super app that will produce revenues, frankly, quite soon. And on the logistics side, COVID has also told us that logistics is very important. So we'll continue to invest there.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's certain parts. You mentioned your fintech bit, GCash. You have plans to take that public? Do you have other parts of the corporation that you wish to also likewise take to market here as well? And if so, which ones?
Well, GCash, there's a lot of value in GCash. The question that the folks there that are running it are asking themselves is when do we realize that value? Because remember, Gcash for the longest time was just in the payment space. And now it's into loans, it's into insurance, there's so much more throughput in Gcash. So there's a lot more growth potential in Gcash. I think we have time. I'll leave it to the management of that group to decide if and when we'll take that public. Now, as for the other companies, the conglomerate's fairly large. The companies themselves have a lot of units underneath each of them. There might be an opportunity to delayer some of that and make those values more visible to the public. But we'll take that one step at a time.
Yeah, so then that brings us to the smaller parts of your business as well, and I know Jacinda's going to ask you about IPOs and the like as well. But which are the particular parts which perhaps are needing consolidation here? Which are the ones that you may not even want to consolidate but exit out of? For instance, water that you've already done.
Well, if you look at all our key BUs. They're fairly large companies, but in relatively fragmented industries, right? There are over 40 banks, for example. Now, you could argue that the smaller companies could also use consolidation. Those are very fragmented industries. Consolidation hopefully will come. And then the question is, if you can consolidate these smaller industries, will the values be large enough to move the needle for our company? I think there might be a couple of those industries where the values are large enough. There might be some of those industries where they aren't, and those will have to rationalize.
Bong, you talked about how you leave it to Ernest and team to decide on Gcash's IPO, but would it make sense to IPO Gcash in the next perhaps 6 to 12 months?
That's a company that value is growing every single day. They're already dealing with over 70 million Filipinos. There's a lot more product throughput there. Does it make sense to realize value? Eventually, of course. But I'm not going to second guess Ernest and his team on that. They've done such a great job. This is an amazing company. I know better than to stick my nose in it.
BPI, of course, acquired Robinsons Bank this year. Just wondering about consolidation plans. Are there plans to acquire more assets in the next 12 months?
Well, the BPI is already growing its market share organically. BPI grows the equivalent of a small bank every year or two. All right, so that's significant. The Robinsons Bank deal is really aimed at creating a partnership with the Gokongwei Group, one of the most respected groups in the country, and probably the third largest conglomerate. And I think we're off to a great start.
Bong, very, very quickly, what's going to be the highlight of 2023 for you? 20 seconds, max.
We're building an ecosystem in electric vehicles. We are going much more digital. We are going much more green. Those are the highlights. It's basically digital, green, and shared value. When you look at digital and green, it automatically translates to more shared value because you can go to a much broader market. You can create much more social value. That's got to be the highlight of our year.